What's up guys, Aaron Miles here with On Tilt Gaming, going to be bringing you part 3 of A Journey Through Wanderer. This time I'm going to be taking another look at the ban list now that we have had some changes to it with the release of Echoes of the New World. It's going to shake up the meta a bit, as it always does with a new ban list, as I'll get into a little bit later. But we're going to start off looking at the old ban list. So this is the one that we looked at in my first video, where the ban list was Ruler's Memorial, Leviatine, Seer of the Blue Moon, Reflect, Child of Potential, Whispers of the Abyss, and Telefairy Tale. I kind of touched on how I didn't think that Ruler's Memorial needed to be banned. As well as, there were some conditional things, like obviously Seer can come off the list if either Pumpkin Witch or Croco Shark get banned, Pumpkin Witch obviously being more likely. And then, Leviatine, Whisper, Telefairy Tale kind of need to be on there, Reflect kind of needs to be on there. So, looking at what was changed, so this is the old list, and this is what was taken off. So, Ruler's Memorial got unbanned, Seer of the Blue Moon got unbanned, and Reflect got unbanned. So, that's a big thing for a lot of people. I did not think Reflect was going to come off the ban list anytime soon, if ever again. The card's extremely powerful. It's an extremely skillful card, and a lot of the time, it really... every good player will tell you back in Reflect format, you felt like it was much easier to beat your opponent just on skill alone. Like, sure, there's still times where somebody draws infinitely better than somebody else, but for the most part, when it got down to it, Reflect mirrors were very grindy, and that's where good players shine. So I'm not super upset to see Reflect come back. It's just definitely not something I expected, and I definitely think that's going to have a huge impact on the meta when you bring back a card that was so powerful that it had to be banned in New Frontiers. So, looking at the new ban list, we have, Leviatine, Telefairy Tale, and Whispers of the Abyss are the 3 cards that stayed, and now we have the additions of Law of Silence, Morgiana the Wise Servant, and Pumpkin Witch. So, Law of Silence was a card that well, let me start with Pumpkin Witch, because Pumpkin Witch is the card that, I had been pushing for a ban in my last video. I thought it was a little bit too powerful in the Feasting decks, in the Fox decks, that kind of stuff. And that still kind of rang true towards the end of the meta. So I've done extensive research into Wanderer. I've looked at all the top 8 lists from all the Italian events, all the American events that we've at least gotten lists for. I haven't gotten a chance to get every day 2 from an American event, but for the most part, the Italian meta is much more refined anyway. We just have so few Wanderer events in America that I feel like our deck lists are pretty unrefined. This is the one time I will say that the Italians are definitely a step ahead of us in this one. Just looking at their deck lists compared to ours, you can see that our lists look a lot like theirs did like 3-4 weeks ago. In Columbus, people were still copying like month-and-a-half old lists in Wanderer, while Italy was still innovating. So Pumpkin Witch still, been relevant, mostly in the Fox decks. Featsing kind of fell off really hard from the get-go. It kind of came out of the gate kind of strong at the first event at Billy's Wanderer 1K in Maryland, but, it took 3 of the top 8 spots, and then after that, we didn't really see it. Never really made an impact in Italy. It topped once or twice, but outside of the first few weeks of the format, nobody was playing Featsing anymore. But Fox has continued to dominate. Pumpkin Witch has been in most, if not all, of the lists. Actually, it hasn't been all of them. It's been most of them, though. Pumpkin Witch is still making a huge impact on Fox. So it's definitely a card that I can understand being banned. But now I really want to get into Law of Silence. Law of Silence is a card that I've been pushing for a ban for a little while, ever since Italy kind of refined their meta, and Federico Zappini came up with that Lumia list, where you would just kind of law loop your opponent through Frigg, and then, once that kind of took over, and people saw that being played, Law of Silence started to get picked up in other decks, most notably Fox. They're eventually split into 2 kinds of Fox. There was what I call White Abdul Fox and White Law Fox. So the White Abdul Fox obviously plays Abdul. It plays a little bit more like, what you're used to with Fox. And it doesn't always, play the 4 green white stones. Sometimes it'll play like 2 or 3 green white stones. It plays like butterflies, it plays seal, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, it's focusing more on a black-green deck that pumps out creatures, pumps out chimeras, and then pumpkin witches to kill you. The other one, White Law Fox, plays 4 Law of Silence, 4 Seal of Wind and Light, 4 Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly, 4 green white stones, and it's really just looking to set up the board to a point where it can Law of Silence and then Pumpkin Witch you and kill you. And it does not play Abdul, is a pretty noteworthy difference between the two. It's why, it's obvious to differentiate the names. I call it Abdul versus Law Fox. But the point I'm trying to get at here is that Law of Silence became a very powerful tool in combination with Pumpkin Witch in the Fox deck. And then you're like, okay, well maybe we could just ban Pumpkin Witch, but then, you look at decks like Arla 2.0, which a lot of people forget it kind of fell off after the beginning of the format, but it came out so strong at the beginning that it was still a deck that maintained, I believe, either the number 2 or 3 spot in event tops by the end of the format, just because of how strong it was in the beginning. And that was all thanks to Law of Silence. Like, if I Law you and then, I Gruz Ballesta Secret Technique, the only deck that's going to be able to do something about it is Fox. They're going to be able to Amit into the Secret Technique stone, kill it, and they can kind of get back from under that. No other deck really had an answer to Law of Silence. Control was not really seen in the meta because it was too hard for them to just deal with the Law of Silence into a Pumpkin Witch, because even if you leave open Seal Mana and then I Law you and you seal it, you're now tapped out. And I could even have a second Law, or I could have a Seal for your Law. Law of Silence is just a little bit too powerful because of the way that Force of Will's rules work. The ability to play cards before your untap phase has really given Law of Silence way too much leeway in the format. It's just a little bit too powerful to have instant speed things like this, and I know that a lot of people fought me on the ban for it, saying, it was a little preemptive, and I agree. I thought banning Law of Silence was a little bit of a preemptive ban, but I don't personally have a problem with preemptive bans. Law of Silence, just looking at it objectively as a card, you kind of realize that at some point down the road, this is a card that will need to be banned. Some kind of combo deck will eventually come out, and when you can just Law your opponent out of the game and then combo them out, you really can't argue that eventually this card was going to need to go away, and I think now is the perfect time for it. It's been a little bit too powerful with the Lumia deck, with the Line, with the Fox decks, with the Arla decks. Just too many top-tier decks. Even Prisia Burn started to play Law of Silence towards the end, because it's almost impossible to deal with a Prisia if I just Law of Silence you and then flip it in Sprinting Flame Horse, and then, play a split on top of that or something along those lines. Like, it was just getting too out of hand in too many decks, so I'm very happy to see that finally go away. And then the last new banned card is Morgiana the Wise Servant. This is a card that I was never a huge fan of being banned. I always thought it was relatively in check. I always thought that you should ban other cards that were in, because the one deck that this was obviously played in, more or less, was the Feasting decks, which, as I was saying before, came out of the gate really strong, and then fell off almost immediately. So Morgiana actually hasn't really been finding her place in the meta. I believe the only place that she's really been showing up in top lists has been Arla 2.0, because they want to get to their combo pieces. It's probably the only real combo deck left in the format. So I think taking Morgiana away from combo decks like that is a bit of a rough time for them. You already took away their Law of Silence, you already took away their Pumpkin Witch. Granted, Arla didn't play it, but I guess those 3 cards in combination were just a little bit too powerful. Any deck that plays like Morgiana, Law of Silence, Pumpkin Witch was going to have a good time. Except Feasting apparently, and except everything. So I don't really see what that might sound like a contradictory statement. Like, oh yeah, if you just play these 3 cards, like you'll top, and then nothing was playing those 3 cards and topping. Which kind of just leads me to say, like, Pumpkin Witch and Law were the problem. I don't think Morgiana was really doing anything at this point. The ban seems a little unnecessary to me, but that's fine. I would rather have too many cards be banned than not enough cards be banned. Although it is a little interesting to me also that with Morgiana banned, we didn't bring back Whisper from the Abyss, because the reason that Whisper was banned for the most part was the tree deck, where you would play Morgiana, then you would play Whisper, you would pay yourself down to 100 life, then you would get your 3 Yigdor Wolves and Beastly Attacks and all that. Or Prisia's Call to Action, rather, not Beastly Attack, sorry. And with Morgiana banned, you don't have that deck anymore, because the whole power, like, sure, drawing 7 cards is powerful, but with Morgiana, it was look at 21 cards, and then, look at 3 cards every time I draw a card. If you don't have Morgiana, Whispers is much less powerful. Paying 3,900 life to draw 7 cards probably will lose you the game, because the whole goal was to hit 4 Yigdor Wolves at some point in that, and now let's say you hit 2 even, and then maybe 1 Prisia's Call to Action. Unless you draw another Prisia's Call to Action off of that, then you're not winning the game. And then you have to draw a Yigdor Wolf off that, but then you don't have another Prisia's Call to Action. Sure, you get out 3 Yigdor Wolves, but that's if you run very statistically unlikely in your 7 drawn cards. So overall, I feel like Whisper could come off the ban list now that Morgiana's gone. I definitely am not complaining that it didn't, because it's very possible that, there's something that I'm missing that someone else will pick up on, and, if Whispers was legal, this would just run the format. So, once again, totally fine with more cards being banned than they need to be. Although it is interesting to see our ban list. It stayed as the same size, but that Reflect coming off the ban list is really something I'm excited to keep an eye on. And then, finally, something I wanted to take a look at was So the old meta, when RDE came out, that's when Wanderer started to really pick up, and we had the previously mentioned ban list of Rulers Memoria, Levatine, Seer, Telefairy Tale, Reflect, and Whispers of the Abyss. So these were the top 5 rulers of that format. And I believe this is in order as well. If I remember correctly, out of the 9 or so events that I got to take deck lists from, Fox took 32 top 8 spots, Arla took 9 top 8 spots, Lumia took 6, Priscia also took 6, and Gil Alhamat either took 5 or 6. Um, but one of the big things I wanted to point out is that the 4 rulers on top, Fox, Arla, Lumia, and Priscia, all played Law of Silence. So that was a huge thing, that a huge tool that those decks have now lost. And granted, the law list was doing about as well as the Abdul list as far as Fox is concerned, so I don't think they're really hurt by the law loss. I know that the Pumpkin Witch loss also actually doesn't hurt them as much. Most of the Abdul lists are only running like, 1 or 2 of that card. So it's totally fine for Fox to lose that. I still think it's going to be one of the stronger decks of the format. Arla, unfortunately, I think Arla is out of contention for a top spot at this point. It was already not doing well after the format began. It started off strong and fell off later. Now that Law of Silence is gone, you could go, oh yeah, we'll just go back to Final Breeze like, we do in New Frontiers, and you have to torrent your Final Breeze. The problem is that with Echoes of the New World, Severing Winds came out, and now torrenting Final Breeze is a really rough strategy to try and stick to for a deck that already had to run pretty perfectly. And I don't think Fox is losing its top spot in the meta, so you're still going to have that problem of your worst matchup being the best deck. Then we go into Lumia. The 6 tops that Lumia had, 4 of them were Federico Zoppini, and all of them were the Lumia Law Lock list. The one that Frigg loops, the Law of Silence, and a couple other cards. Losing Law of Silence is a huge tool for that deck, and quite frankly, I'm not sure it's going to survive. I've been playing Lumia Hook Myths in New Frontiers, and I definitely think that the deck is still strong. I just don't know if it's going to be able to keep up with Wanderer. Now that Fox gets back things like Gretel, and a few other things like that, Seal of Wind and Light, because White Fox is prevalent in Wanderer, but not in New Frontiers. I'm just not sure that that list is going to really be able to keep up, and I'm not sure it's going to be able to beat Control anywhere near as well as it was before, when it had Law of Silence to kind of lock them out of their plays, make sure that the Frigg would hit, make sure that they get their Law back. So yeah, not looking great for Lumia. Priscia, Law was a pretty late addition to that deck, so I think it'll actually be fine. It's probably still the best aggro ruler in Wanderer, so I think Priscia is going to do just fine. And then we come to Gil Alhamat, the deck that was kind of holding its ground but losing out to the Law of Silence decks, as you expect a control deck too. So now I expect Gil to rise up in the meta for more reasons than just, the Law of Silence ban. The problem is that the Cheshire's Cat Assistant combo is still legal in Wanderer, and we have been told by the company that that was intentional. Levatine is banned, but Horn is not banned, Hydromonica is not banned, so you still get that Gil Alhamat FTK in Wanderer, which is definitely going to shake up the meta. How do I feel about that deck? I'm not sure it's going to be the end-all be-all. I don't think it's going to, really take over the meta, but I do think it'll take a few top spots. But overall, I think it's just too inconsistent to top a Grand Prix or something like that. I know that at the Italian Masters qualifiers that they do, their Wanderer events can be like 9 rounds, and I'm just not sure a deck that requires you to open a copy of a 4 of with no way to search it, I'm just not sure that that is a deck that is going to be able to withstand 9 rounds of competition. So, I'm not sure how popular that version will be. However, the control version, obviously, much more viable now that there is not Law of Silence. Which kind of brings me to the one card that I think could be banned going forward if the format kind of stays true to what it's been, with just Fox on top, followed by like Lumia, Priscia, Alhamat, is Vlad Tepes. So Vlad is not a very good main deck ruler in my opinion. I don't think that you should be building a deck around Vlad Tepes. Something that proved very powerful in the RDE Wanderer format, though, was Vlad Tepes as a side deck card in Fox. So, when I won my first Grand Prix, I was playing Reflect Alice's World, and I had a Vlad Tepes in my side deck. And the reason for that is there were a lot of hard control decks that were anti-Alice's World that were like, oh, I can easily beat this out, it's not hard. You just have to stop all their creatures, and there's nothing they can do. You have to control their regalia, and then when they flip Reflect, they won't have enough counters to stop everything, and you can easily just take the game away from them. So, if you were to take a meta deck like that with a shell, and this is a little bit less viable now that Pumpkin Witch is gone, It was much easier when you had Witch to side into Vlad and just house the control matchup. So you leave your deck completely the same and you just side into Vlad. And for most of the game, you just don't put a card on the table and you sit there and drain them with Vlad. And because they've put in all this hate against stopping your low cost resonators, and controlling your Regalia and things like that, it was really easy to just win the game by Vlading them out. And sure, they could, drop one of their win cons. They usually cost 4 or 5 mana. For the most part, in New Frontiers, it was Celestial Wing Seraph for control at that point. But they're just not gaining enough life to really keep up with the Vlad drains, and they have to have opened the Celestial Wing Seraph and kept it to really reliably see it by turn 5, because, they can flip Reflect and search it because they are looking for those orbs as well, but then they're not going to have the 5 mana to cast it, because they don't play any kind of ramp in control. So it was really easy for Vlad to be a side deck card that would just house the control matchup by just not putting a card on the table and constantly draining them with Vlad. And then we started to see the same thing happen in Fox and Wanderer. If you played against Gil Alhamat and they sided in, all this hate for your little guys, you would just side into Vlad, and you would just, take the game over. You would just turn 2 drain, turn 3 drain, turn 4 double drain. And Alhamat really didn't have a fast enough win condition to keep up with this. And it became very easy. This is unfortunately no longer possible, but it became very easy to just drain your opponent down to like 2,000 or so life, and then Law of Silence Pumpkin Witch OTK them. So even with Law and Pumpkin Witch gone, I still think it's very viable for meta decks to side Vlad Tepes as an answer to control. Because control's win conditions are so weak, they take so long to set up, they're not really applying pressure early, it's really, really easy for you to just sit there and drain them, which is why Vlad is known as the ruler that wins control mirrors. Turns out that in the control mirror, though, you don't actually have to play any cards with Vlad, you just sit there and drain them, so what you're playing, your 40 main deck cards don't really matter as much. So it's very easy for you to just side into that and, sweep a control matchup. It's why I've never been a big fan of control in Wanderer. It's why I didn't really play control in the Alice's World format. So I really think that Vlad is a card that we could see maybe not getting banned anytime soon, but I definitely think it's something that the company should be keeping an eye on, because this is a trend that I think will continue in Wanderer. I definitely can't think of any reason why it wouldn't. Like, you're not going to side in Shackles Vice against Fox when you're playing Gil Alhamat. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. And even if you do and you manage to get it out, like, they, 1, probably play addition removal, and 2, can just play their Fox game anyway. Cards are still legal, like, Realm of Pure Spirits is a card that is legal in Wanderer that, Fox is side decking. It's easier for them to get to it because they have Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly. So that on top of Vlad, like, it's just too much for control to handle. It's kind of like how Prisia was in New Frontiers in RD. Like, they just have too many tools for control to handle, even though Prisia, had other things that had the 4 Wind Secluded, the 4 Frigg in every version of Prisia, pretty much, at least in the side deck. And then, siding into Vlad and Realm of Pure Spirits pretty much does the same thing. So it'll be interesting to see how the meta goes forward, though. I don't think the Alhamat FTK is going to be very prevalent. I do think Reflect is going to have a huge impact on the meta, and I could very easily seeing that become the number 2 ruler, if not the number 1. Personally, I've constantly said that if I'd been playing Wanderer this format, unfortunately I didn't get to play in any events, I would have been playing White Law Fox, and I think going forward I would definitely be playing some kind of Reflect deck, so it will be interesting to see how that shakes up the meta, and I'll keep you all posted on that on Untilt Gaming's website. I will continue to do the diligent work of looking for these Italian lists and keeping you guys updated on what's going on in that meta. And I'll continue to pump out videos like this. Hopefully when, we've got a few more events going on, I can get an established meta base for you guys. And, we'll take a look at that when we get to it. Until then, I am Aaron Miles for Untilt Gaming. Have a good one.